Depositors, creditors, and stakeholders of 20 liquidated banks in Nigeria are expected to get about 61.63 billion naira as paid liquidation dividends. Now, a statement from the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, which revealed this on Monday, disclosed that about 45.45 billion naira had been paid as of July 2023, with an additional 16.18 billion naira in liquidation dividends to be paid to the intended recipients. According to the NDIC, the 20 banks were closed due to the revocation of their operating licenses by the Central Bank of Nigeria between 1994 and 2018. To talk more about this, I'm being joined by Muktar Mohammed, CEO Asheer Dynamic Solutions, and of course is joining me from Lagos. Thank you so much, Muktar, for talking to us.
My pleasure.
Let's start with the banks. Now, these banks were closed due to the revocation of their operating licenses by the CBN between 1994 and 2018. What were their infractions? What were the infractions that led to their fallout with the Apex Bank to even start with?
Most of them was by insider trading, directors' loan, defaulting in payment, then eroding of capital through investment in schemes that at the end of the day could not bring the desired result. And also, most especially again, I think, was lack of regulation by the Central Bank of Nigeria. That was basically what was the major problem. So you can't rule out the macroeconomic situation. So what I think it was more or less a man-made situation whereby banks were mismanaged by the management teams.
In terms of regulations, Muktar, and of course oversight functions of the central bank and other related agencies, don't you think that they also have a blame in all of this? Because we have institutions that are meant to serve as checks and balance for these banks to ensure that they are in line with the rules of engagement and trade, but it seems as though they have not been able to do their job to keep these banks in line. Would you also apportion blame to the Apex Bank and all the related agencies?
Of course, you definitely will, because they are not shielded from the problem. They are part of the problem. Every banking crisis that we've had in this country, the Apex banks have played a more pivotal role than even the management of those banks, because sometimes they tend to overlook things that they ought not to overlook. You shouldn't forget so soon that it took the political will from the then President Yaradua for CBN governor at that time, Lamido to wave the big stick on banks that were not performing below expectations, especially whereby shareholders' funds were already eroded. Also, that when you look at that crisis at that time was investment in sectors. Some of them were also buying assets abroad to the detriment of the shareholders. And yet, before then, you had a governor, the CBN governor, that was thinking of how to fix it and overlook those issues, and it became a very systematical risk to the country. And then with that came the global financial crisis. So it was even, it took a lot for Nigerian banks, and that's when we started having AMCOM. That's when AMCOM came to stream to buy this back loan. Up to this moment, we are still struggling to get some of these debtors to pay their loans, and most of their assets have been confiscated, but even if some of these cases are in court. So definitely the Apex Bank, the main regulators, cannot be absorbed from the issues that have happened to banks that have gone under.
Okay, of course we know that bank liquidation is the last resort option that is taken when a bank is insolvent and cannot be saved. So in situations like these, what significant impact do you think it usually has on the country's economy, countries involved, individuals who have deposited their monies in these banks over time, and creditors who also have a financial relationship with these financial institutions?
Well, number one, what it does is leave the country with no confidence, especially in the area of investment. A country economic is always viewed by the banking sector, which is called the financial sector. Once your financial sector is weak, then you begin to have crisis in your economy. So definitely that has cost Nigeria a lot in terms of, like you said, investment in the financial spaces. For individuals, they will be most hit, especially the ordinary Nigerians, because it's not in that the NDIC will not give them money, especially if it's less than 500,000 or about 500,000. for those that have above 500,000, they may have to wait for some of the assets of this bank to be liquidated. And I think that's what is happening in the current payment by NDDC. But again, the time frame that it takes for them to have their money, the type of clearance they will have to go through, they will have to bring a lot of documents. And sometimes some of them don't have this document, and it becomes a problem for them accessing their money. So definitely it have impact, big, huge impact. And that is why it has been very difficult to have a major financial bank invest in any big bank in Nigeria because of the issues that have to do with a failed bank and weak regulatory monitoring. But I think we are getting better by the day now. The day whereby banks declare paper profit is over, we are beginning to see profit in reality to what the banks are saying, especially their PE ratio, earning per shares, and their investment, and also their reward to their shareholders. So definitely we are off those days, but again, CBN still needs to up their game, and so that we don't have such crises again.
Well, coupled with the time payments will be made, of course, we know that 45.45 billion naira was already paid in July, and the balance is what has been expected now. But then in other circumstances, aside the time payments would be made, whether it is below 500 or above 500, how are we so sure that those who have their monies or investments, financial investments trapped in these banks will have their actual sums being paid? Are they going to be able to recoup on all the monies that has gone into these systems, or is it just going to be a fraction of what they had put into these financial institutions?
Okay, thank you, Lekan. See, when it comes to that, the NDIC has a threshold, and so that threshold sometimes is to take care of the less vulnerable. Now, when you come to the less vulnerable, you need to look at that time when some of these issues happen, that they are paying now, what was the exchange rate? Inflation have eaten into this money. So for those that have between 250 to 500,000, they are paid. But outside, because those are the money that were insured by the bank between 250 to 500,000. So I think within 6 to 7 months, they tend to get their money back, depending on how the NDIC is able to meet, and then the insurance companies involved. But when it comes to the high net investors, which unfortunately, they are the key drivers of the economy. They have to wait for those assets of those banks to be sold, and then when those assets are sold, then they look at how much you say the bank are owing. When you buy other people that the bank are owing, then they come to a percentage, and they share that funds based on the availability of funds and the percentage agreed. So sometimes, by and large, they end up not getting back their exact money, because NDIC also, from those sales, will have to remove their own overhead costs, legal processes, and everything. So added up. So definitely they don't seem to have the exact money that they put in those banks, unless when they come with federal government guarantee or government guarantee that, okay, you know what, we want all investors in this bank to have their exact money, then government will have to pay for it. That what happened when AMCOM took over some debt to make sure that those banks never go under. So it all depends, but by and large, I think 90% of, if I can, 98 to 99% of them do not get the exact money, especially when it's above the threshold of 500,000.
And that's quite interesting, I must say. Of course, we know that the NDIC also said that they would be prioritizing depositors over creditors and stakeholders. So I'd like to find out, is that the usual way it is done? Is it a global practice to first go for refunding depositors over other stakeholders? And if that is the case, what are the factors that would determine what is to be paid to the depositors, to the creditors, and of course the banks, that is the stakeholders now?
Well, we start with the stakeholders. When you run a company aground, then you have to suffer the consequences. So normally, the people that suffered when banks goes under, they are mostly investors, and then the investors especially suffered, and then the banks itself, they go under, then their management team have a bad name, and they go under. They are not able to recoup their money, both the management team or those, all those that invested in those banks, like the investors. So the CBN will tell that they are more interested in meeting the demands of their depositors. After the depositors, then they begin to look at the creditors. And the creditors has to do because of the perception you don't want to perceive, especially when these creditors are foreigners. Okay. It gives a bad name to people. to people, so they need to act fast to that.
Okay, Muktar, let's quickly go on a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the discussion. We also want to look at how the CBN can play a leading role in ensuring that banks do not go under. We'll be back to discuss that. Just stay with us.